I'm here to discuss camouflage.
Camouflage has left its mark on the Home Guard. This is how they're working these days. Many units are adopting guerrilla tactics in their schools of intensified training. The art of concealment by merging with the landscape is illustrated in these pictures of Home Guardsmen exercising at an Army Fieldcraft Center. If brick buildings were the background instead of bushes, they'd turn into the local. It's really amazing how close you can be to a body of men without knowing it. The disappearing trick has been brought to a fine art. A last-minute panoramic view of some of the men who stayed as trees for a while to face the cameramen. Incidentally, all dogs had been warned off the course.
My name is Alan Frank. I am Jack Frank's grandfather, and I worked with Meldon-Mitchell, not really in camouflage or developing it, but was involved in some of the meetings he had with the concerning the Korean situation, and seeing the war through with him and his development of the different camouflage elements that he went through and updated from the First World War and the Second World War into the present Korean and Vietnam situation. Meldon-Mitchell had a very large art studio. A little of the background was he started off making a lot of placards for the movie houses that you see today of the coming attractions. And he developed quite a big following of studios who had used him. From there he got into the packaging field and had the first packaging studio in the United States. I don't know if you people are familiar with the Piggly Wiggly stores, but these are supermarkets down in the South and now throughout the United States, and they were the first one that used packaging, designing shopping bags to take out your groceries, and he made the designs for them. Yes, in the studio, everything that was developed was a concept of hand sketches brought to the customer, and the customers he had and we had at the time were Lever Brothers, General Foods, Kraft Foods, Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola. He designed for all of them because after the Second World War, packaging became very, very important to these big companies. He designed, when I say packaging, the labels for these consumer products. And the design is what sold the product, so he worked on those designs, particularly in the brewery, that were cheap, inexpensive paper labels. Took them from paper to foil, which was a revolution. Actually, he started by taking the whiskey companies from a beautiful paper, embossed paper label to an even more beautiful label using foil and getting the reflective designs off the foil. So he was involved in designs from the very, very beginning. There were many times he and it was just, he made the presentations, but I worked with him and understood what he was talking about and what he was trying to accomplish, down to Washington, talked in front of the House of Representatives, the Senate, and of course spent many, many hours with the military, particularly in the Korean and Vietnam situation, developing paints that could not be detected even if the enemy used infrared. I only learned from the grandfather, Meldon-Mitchell, from Mel, about camouflage and what he was doing, and the papers and the pictures of him where he first started in the First World War, developing some type of camouflage to either hide our equipment, hide the troops, or put equipment into a camouflage equipment, but building them in barns and homes, or they look like farmhouses from the air, so the enemy wouldn't realize the placement of our artillery. That was the beginning of his career with the Marine Corps. And then we're going to skip over to the that was the First World War. The Second World War, he then became very active. The military had requested him to come back into the military, which he couldn't because he had a family and an art studio. But as you heard before, he was really into the Marine Corps, and he probably would have gone back if he didn't have his family. He went to during the Second World War, he spent many days down in Washington. He spent a lot of time with the military in developing the present day camouflage. He developed what they call the GI Mel suit, which is the present and most popular Marine Corps camouflage suit that they even wear today. He developed these things, and particularly paints that were not infected, I shouldn't say infected, were not affected by infrared light. So if the enemy planes came over and they were photographing using infrared, you could not pick up the camouflage. It would photograph, if it didn't have the this type of paint on them, infrared paint, that would not show up. You could spot our troops immediately, or our equipment. By developing this, you couldn't spot it, and it really helped our troops. You have to understand, camouflage really saved a lot of lives. It was used for tanks, it was used for vehicles, and in the Navy, used for big battleships and aircraft carriers. So if you put this all together, it really served a big purpose.
Time and time again, ships loaded with vital supplies for the war effort fell victim to German torpedoes. It soon became clear that the contrasting black and white design made it especially difficult to identify the direction in which a ship was sailing. This alone undoubtedly helped to save the lives of thousands of merchant seamen.
That it saved a lot of lives, particularly when we talked about our troops, our people, our soldiers. He has gained many awards from the military, letters from the Adjutant General, many congressmen. He was well known in the field, and even with the Vietnam or Korean and then the Vietnam situation, they asked him to keep designing and bringing things up to date. And again, as I say, it was very effective in saving lives, particularly, I'm going to say, our lives, meaning the boys in service.
And do you remember any of the marketing that he did?
Well, Meldon-Mitchell not only had the packaging studio, but he was very deeply involved with advertising agencies. These advertising agencies would get very deeply involved with marketing. Now, we didn't have to do any marketing for the military. The government really did their own marketing, by knowing what they wanted camouflage, such as camouflage uniforms, the camouflage paint used on jeeps and military vehicles and tanks, as I said before, ships used in the Navy. So marketing was important, but not that important, because the military, if they were coming out with a new